Welcome to the Vantage Point. Today's topic on the Melungeons was requested several times by viewers of my series on the origins of Appalachian and Southern surnames. This is a topic better suited to the Vantage Point. It's not part of the surname series, but as you'll see in a minute, it's sort of related. Back in the mid-1990s, I was looking for a publisher for my first book. It was about the cultural contributions of Germanic and Scots-Irish people, otherwise known as the Celts, who settled in the Upper South. My book was eventually published, first in 1998, then again in 2004, before Ancestry.com extended into the DNA realm. Back then, genetic genealogy was only thought about by a handful of scientists. In the absence of DNA analysis, and with few Appalachian folk really knowing from whence their ancestors came, it was common for people to look at physical traits to assign an ethnic background. Red-haired people were thought of as Irish. Olive-complexioned people had to have some Cherokee blood, but the dark-skinned people who lived in Hancock County near the Virginia and Tennessee state lines were a genuine mystery. They were called the Melungeons. Some writers called them the Lost Tribe of Appalachia, so speculation was rampant. Were they lost Jews, Portuguese sailors, Moors, or Arabs? With the arrival of genetic genealogy, we can now determine the populations from which they were drawn. Before we get to their DNA, you should know that Melungeons have typical Appalachian surnames like Collins, Goins, Bunch, Evans, and Mullins, among others. They also speak Appalachian English and eat the same kinds of foods as the white folks over in the next holler. In fact, I have some of those surnames in my family tree, but I'm clearly not a dark-skinned person. My daughter has a perpetually tanned friend from that region. Her maiden name is Mullins. I was keen to find out her DNA profile. I'll tell you her DNA story in just a minute, but first, let me tell you about a scientific study that investigated members of the Melungeon community right there in Hancock County, Tennessee. The results of that study should put to rest any misgivings or mysteries surrounding a community of people who've been in the historic records since 1810. In 2005, Family Tree DNA, otherwise known as FTDNA, began a study on people in Hancock County who have historically claimed Melungeon ancestry. They also included a group of related people called the Carmel Indians. They live in the nearby areas of Kentucky. The study focused on mitochondrial and Y chromosome DNA profiles. These two lines represent the maternal and paternal lines of descent. I should point out that the study did not include an analysis of autosomal DNA. That's the test that tells us our ethnicity estimates. That's a mouthful. The results of the study appeared in the April 2012 issue of the Journal of Genetic Genealogy. And here's what they found. All the few women tested belonged to the European haplogroup H. 48% of the men had R1b, a Western European haplogroup from the Atlantic coastal areas of Europe. R1b is found from Ireland to Germany and then down to Spain and Portugal. This may come as a shock to you, but northern Iberia, which includes Spain and Portugal, is a Celtic region. Natives of Iberia can be dark or light-skinned. That doesn't explain the darker complexion of the Melungeon people, however. The origin of their pigmentation lies in sub-Saharan Africa. Some 30% of the men carry an African Y chromosome. Only one man had a Viking DNA and another had a Native American paternal line. This is not a particularly difficult situation to explain in historical and sociological terms. Folks, it was not uncommon for there to be free Africans living in areas in the South, not just in the North, but they were also in the South. Indentured and free white women sometimes fell in love with a free man. Clearly, white men contributed their DNA to a community by illegally marrying African or mixed-race women. It was still early in American history, so these interracial couples were not well received in society. They moved to the remote hollows of southern Appalachia to live life as they saw fit. Most of them were agrarian anyway, so they could live off the land. Through the generations, more admixing occurred. Today, autosomal tests can reveal the presence of sub-Saharan genes. Earlier, I mentioned my daughter's friend named Mullins. Her ancestry test revealed that she has no sub-Saharan DNA. She's not a Melungeon. She has very little Native American DNA, so she got her complexion from her Irish and Welsh ancestors. Folks, Native Irish and Welsh often have dark hair and skin. Think Colin Farrell and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Well, folks, I hope you found this brief talk interesting, and if you did, please subscribe to the channel. I look forward to seeing you again here on The Vantage Point. God bless you and yours. Bye-bye.
Isn't a life of passion really what we all want to aspire to have, to live for? Life of passion, life of passion, life of passion. Life of passion, the one that we should all
Well, this video is a follow-up of the Melungeons. No, they're not a lost people. Most of them know where they come from, who their ancestors are, and how they got here. But some don't. Now, they've got DNA testing still going on. This shows what you're related to, what country, what race of people, and this traces it back all the way back to hundreds of years ago. And even further than that. So they're still in the process of studying that. And what we're going to talk about now, we know who you're related to and where you possibly come from in the old days, but how did you get here and when? This is just 11 possibilities that we're going to cover in this video of possibly how these people got in these mountains. Now, like I said, most of them already know where they came from. Now, these people, I've had the privilege and honor of working and growing up with some of these people. These are honest, hard-working mountain people. And they would do anything in the world for you. I had the honor of working with some of them through my careers of working. Now, like I said, I'm going to get this straight right now. I'm not a scholar, I'm not a professor, and I don't work for some college with some doctorate degree and some study going on. I'm just an everyday mountain boy raised in these mountains amongst these people, and I just want to honor them, and I just want to show some history on them so their time and their history is not forgotten. So, that being said, I'm going to show you the 10 possibilities of where and when and how some of these people may have got in these mountains. Some of them are kind of extreme, but keep an open mind that this is just possibilities. These are not facts or nothing, just possibilities. So this is just a video on some of these possibilities. So here we go.
What's the difference between a service animal and an emotional support pet? Well, a service animal...
Number 1, the Native Americans, the first true and original people of this great land. And they settled all across this country. Here's a map of all the great tribes of this country back in the day, their territory. And they was here thousands of years before any settler come in. Now here we'll mostly be talking about the southern Appalachians in the southeast, of all the different people and races that merged with the Native Americans and became little groups. Now, this is more or less fact more than it is a theory. 35 to 40,000 years ago, they came through the Bering Straits during the last ice age out of Asia and settled these great lands. North America, Central America, even down into South America. Red is by land, blue is by sea. And they came into this land and they lived off of it and hunted and growed their families, and they honored this land. They worshiped it. It was their life-giving blood. And they passed down their oral tradition generation after generation. What they've learned, what they've seen, what they've done, and how they've raised their children so they could pass it on to the next generation. Now, our country has had some sad times. This is the Trail of Tears. The Cherokee, along with a lot of other great nations out of the East, was relocated in the 1830s. Here's a map of the Indian tribes and where they was relocated to. This was a sad time in American history. Well, not only did this happen in the East, it happened in all other parts of the country. West, Southwest, Northwest, the Plain States, of people being relocated from their land that all they ever know to preserves. So there is a lot of sad, tragic stories around this country. And you hope that man would learn from history, from his mistakes. But that don't seem to be the case, does it? Well, these great people, their legacy lives on. They are a proud people, and to this day, they still carry on their traditions. Number 2, Lost Tribes of Israel. Now, this is one of the hardest ones of all the possibilities of how people got into this North American country. And this happened in 721 BC. The Assyrian Empire invaded Israel and took it over and disbanded all the tribes of Israel. 10 of them escaped. You can see here the map where they all disappeared to. And down here in the bottom in the green is possibility of one group leaving the Mediterranean into the Atlantic, and possibly they made it to the shores of North America. But there's really no proof of that. It's all speculation. Now, they even found coins. They wasn't dated to 721 BC. These coins were dated and found in a plowed field in Powell County, Kentucky, back in the late 50s by a farmer. And they dated them back to 133 AD. That's a lot different from 721 BC. But these coins got here somewhere. And not only that, they found them in Tennessee, Illinois, and Virginia. Now, these coins were printed and dated back to 133 AD against the last Jewish revolt against the Roman Empire. And here's the name of the guy that was leading the revolt in Israel at the time and printed these coins. But now these coins got into America, into North America some way or another. They just didn't fall out of the sky. But this is a hard one to prove, and it's all speculation. But they're still doing a lot of studies, and archaeology is always uncovering stuff day by day. So there you go on number 2. Number 3.
Drinking warm water before bed resets blood sugar levels and reverses type 2. Thousands of people.
The Mayans. This is an old culture from Central America up into Mexico. And they've been around a long time. For sure, they are mound builders. Their work still stand today. Now, these flourished from 300 BC to 250 AD. So it's 550 years of their history that flourished. And they could have spread out and had satellite villages with Indians in North America. These are the mound builders of Alabama, North Georgia, Mississippi. They don't know for sure, but they could have been tied in with the mines in some way, some fashion. Now, they're still uncovering this stuff as we speak today, the archaeologists. So it's possible that these could have become the modern Indians of today. So they could have mixed with the people and the Indians of the area at the time. So this is number 3. Number 4, the Vikings. They was here a full 500 years before Columbus. But that ain't what I learned in school back in the day. And they were here around this area, around North America, in 900 AD. And they'd already been in Greenland, Nova Scotia, and they'd worked their way down into the northeast United States today, in North America, and even into the Ohio River. I read stories of finding burial chambers with Indians with Vikings in them, shields, spears, blonde-headed skeletons. And I'm sure they fought with the Indians, and eventually they became peace with them, and they worked together and tried to get their settlements throughout this northeast. And here, the archaeologists are working on some of the Viking settlements, digging up artifacts, documenting history. This is some of the places in northeast United States here in North America. And here's some of the finds they found, and this is found around the Great Lakes. This is some of the Viking finds that they found today. And I'm sure there's a lot of other sites too. But this is what they found in the Great Lakes area. St. Lawrence Seaway or the Lakeways, don't know. But they done a lot of sea traveling, and they could have migrated and mixed with the Native Americans. And anything's possible. So that's number 4. Number 5, the Knights Templar. They come into this area. A lot of rumors about them, a lot of stories. They come into this area in the 14th century, the first time, well before Columbus. And they explored this eastern coast. Now the story goes that Friday the 13th, King Philip of France owed him a lot of money. He was indebted to him. Well, he'd take care of that problem. He'd just arrest them all and dissolve and disband the Knights Templar. Well, he did just that. But he only got a few of them. The fleet got away, and they took all the treasures with them that they had got in the Holy Land, and they was not going to let him have none of it. So the rumor goes, they're trying to prove it, that he went to the eastern coast of North America. And there's proof all up and down this east coast, from Nova Scotia all the way down into New England to the mid-states, eastern states there. And there's all kinds of markings of them. So they was here. Now later on, St. Clair, a Scottish explorer, he was part of the Knights Templar too. And he come here in 1398, and he tried to explore the place and set up some settlements and colonize it. And he was here well before Columbus. Now here, Newport Tower in Rhode Island, he's supposedly to have built. It still stands today. Now these Knights Templar, they supposedly took a treasure, the rumor goes, and took it to Oak Island off of the shores of Nova Scotia. But they've looked for 200 years and ain't found it yet. But who's to say it's not there or it is? They're still working on it. So there's number 5. Number 6, Portuguese ships. Now this time period in time, the Portuguese were exploring just like the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, and all the other people at the time. And they was exploring the eastern coast of North America. This is the early 1400s, before Columbus. And I'm sure these are treacherous seas here around this east coast, and they lost a lot of ships. And some of them went down, and the survivors, they would go to shore here if they survived around the Outer Banks of Virginia, North Carolina, and work their way ashore to the interior of the country. And they probably made friends with the Native Americans and mingled and mixed with them and moved on into the interior. This is a possibility. So that's number 6. Number 7, Hernando de Soto, a Spanish explorer from Spain. He was exploring the southeastern parts of the United States. And this happened between 1539 and 1543. Now, here is a part of the map. He come up from Florida and went into North Carolina and went across the mountains. And he was the first white European man to lay eyes on the Tennessee Valley in 1540. And he brought up slaves with him and captured Native Americans on the way and enslaved them. Now, he had an army of 800 men and 200 slaves when he come into the valley. And he went down the river after he come through the Great Smoky Mountains. He went down the Noletucky till he hit the French Broad. And he come down to an island called Zimmerman's Island. There he stayed and rested his men for 3 weeks while he explored the area. Now, these men had been at this for about a year now, fighting, dying, and they was tired of it. So I would say that some of the slaves and some of his men deserted with the Native Americans into these mountains. And they formed little groups maybe. This is where the Melungeons is. But you don't never know. This could be the start of some of the groups in that area. So this is just a possibility. Now later on, in 43, he went on and found the Mississippi, and he died there of a fever. So that's number 7. Number 8, the Roanoke Colony. Now this little colony was started by John White in 1587. They was from England. And it lasted from 1587 to 1590. And they dealt with the Indians. Some of them were friendly, and some of the other tribes were not. And here's the location of them, just inside the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Here's the site. And they had a bad drought about 1588, and they couldn't grow nothing, and they were starving to death. The Indians helped them a little bit, but really they wouldn't help them at all. So John White left his daughter there and his grandson and 120 people there at the colony. And he took a crew and went to England to get supplies. Said he would be back in a few months. Well, as fate would have it, the British and the Spaniards were at war with each other. And a Spanish Armada fleet had controlling the English Channel. So it was a little over 2 years before he could get back to the colony. And when he got back to the colony, he couldn't find no trace of them nowhere. All he could ever find was just nothing. And he found engraved on a tree, Croatoan. They couldn't figure out what that was. Was that a tribe of people, or was that an island, or was that a place? Nobody could really find nothing. So they searched and searched. And to this day, they're still trying to determine where the missing colony of Roanoke went to. Did they merge with the Indians? Was they killed by the Indians? Or was they killed by the Spaniards that were at war with England. Nobody could ever know. So they're still trying to unravel that, but nothing is fact. So it's all still speculation. So that was number 8.
Castrol GTX Full Synthetic provides 6 times better wear protection. Better oil for maximum protection.
Number 9, Jamestown, Virginia. Now, this little town was started by King James in England. And the company started it was Virginia Company of London. It started out with 104 people from 1609 to 1676. And it couldn't have been a worse year to start it. They were still in a bad drought in this area. Bad drought. And you see the location of Jamestown Colony to where the lost colony of Roanoke is. Right there. You could see the proximity, not that far away. And they were still in a bad drought. A lot of people died from disease and hunger, and they hadn't been resupplied. They went to get resupplied, but they hadn't got their supplies yet. And they tried to work with the Indians. Indians were mostly friendly around here. And they worked together, but the Indians barely could take care of themselves, much less a bunch of starving colonists. Well, their supplies finally come in, and they started supplying this place and growing tobacco. And one thing led to another. They started bringing in slaves to work the fields. And that's how they made their living here. And some of these slaves run off. They run off into the interior with the Native Americans in the area. And sometimes whole groups would escape and go merge with the Native Americans in the area, and they move off into the interior, never be seen again. Now, they finally burnt this place down in 1676. They burnt the city of Jamestown down. They started a new town not far away called Williamsburg, and his still thrives today. So, this is number 9. Number 10, deserters and runaways. Now, a lot of people that fought these wars, it didn't matter what war it was, the Civil War, French-American War, the Revolutionary War, and they'd seen so much killing and destruction that they was sick of it. So they thought they would just get away from this. They couldn't stand it anymore. But they had brave consequences if they got caught. And if they got caught, they'd either be shot or hung. That was just the way it was back in them days. And they would just flee off to these mountains. Again, where they could hide. And they mixed with the Native Americans and other people doing the same thing. And these plantations had a lot of slaves. And some of them were took care of, but a lot of them were mistreated. So every chance they got, they would try to get away. And a lot of them did make it, and they escaped. And some of them didn't make it. But anyway, they fled to these hills too. And they mixed with the population that was hidden in these mountains also, and the Native Americans. So there's a history on that. So that's number 10. Number 11, the settlers. Now we're talking back in the time when they first started settling this country in these Appalachians, especially in the southern Appalachians. They came from the east, looking for freedom and new land, a new beginning. A lot of them come from the eastern coast, from these big cities and ports that brought them here from the old country. And they worked their way inside to where they could find land to themselves and start a new beginning, start farming and raising a family. And they loved this country. It's so beautiful, so vast, and so secluded. And this was a perfect place for them to start a new beginning. And a lot of them come in here It didn't matter what race they was, what color they was. They loved this country, and they fell in love with the native inhabitants, either it be local or Native Americans. And a lot of them back in the old days, that was taboo for people that mixed races. They was shunned, ridiculed. So they kind of stayed to themselves off in these mountains and raised their families and brought up things the way they wanted to on their new life. Now these people in these mountains, they're so diverse. They are good, honest, hard-working people, and they just want to be left alone. So, America is the great melting pot.